My ex-wife, who cheated and left our family years ago, suddenly showed up at my door with another man's child, asking to be a family again. I immediately slammed the door in her face. To provide some background, my ex-wife Angela, 36, and I, 37, met when we were in our mid-20s. I was around 24 when we started working at the same company, and that's how we met. After 2 years of dating, we got married. Within 3 years of marriage, we had 2 daughters, now aged 9 and 7. The second pregnancy was unexpected, and Angela wasn't happy about it. However, she chose not to terminate the pregnancy, despite me telling her that I would support whatever decision she made. I didn't want to put her through something she didn't want. After our first daughter was born, everything seemed great between us. We were happy and in love, but things began to change after the second pregnancy. Angela became moody, irritable, and often picked fights with me or our eldest. I assumed it was just due to hormones, so I tried to adjust to this new side of her. We hoped things would improve, but they only got worse. My daughter and I started walking on eggshells around her. Even though Angela was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom, she had quit her job after our first child was born and took care of the house and our eldest while I worked. When she became pregnant with our second child, I agreed to hire a housekeeper. She claimed she was too tired to manage everything at home, and I didn't want to make her feel burdened, especially during her pregnancy. Although it was tight financially, I made the choice to hire help because I didn't want to add to Angela's stress. I thought she would return to managing the house after our second daughter was born. Just to clarify, I wasn't one of those husbands who didn't help around the house. I did whatever I could after coming home from work, despite being exhausted. However, months passed, and Angela showed no interest in resuming her responsibilities. She remained irritable and refused to do any household work. She would sit at home watching television, neglecting the kids, and paying our neighbor to take them to the park occasionally. I don't want to sound bitter, but I did feel resentful. I was working day and night, while she wasn't even doing the bare minimum. The housekeeper was becoming too costly, and I was also responsible for all the other expenses. I wanted to save money for our daughter's future, but it was getting almost impossible because Angela wasn't helping at all. After nearly 6 months of this, I decided things couldn't continue like this. I had to talk to Angela. I knew it would be a tough conversation, so I asked my parents to watch the girls for a day, and they agreed. That day, I sat Angela down and told her that I understood she was tired after 2 pregnancies, but I needed her to help out. I explained that the housekeeper was becoming too expensive, and we needed to find a way to reduce those costs. I asked her to take on some of the household chores again, so we could renegotiate the housekeeper's salary and save some money. She immediately rejected the idea. She claimed she was too busy watching the kids and suggested that I should earn more money instead of blaming her for our financial situation. I explained that I was already doing my best, but she needed to contribute as well if we wanted to make our marriage work. I also mentioned how she wasn't really looking after the kids. According to the housekeeper, she would let them sit and watch television for hours while she watched reality TV. Bringing this up turned out to be a huge mistake. Angela exploded and accused me of spying on her through the housekeeper. She raged at me, saying she wasn't going to tolerate being pushed around anymore. She claimed she was done with doing all the work while I sat at a desk every day. Then she told me it was my fault that I couldn't afford a housekeeper and criticized me for asking her to help. It didn't make any sense, and she was just trying to deflect the blame. We ended up arguing fiercely. She called me a loser who couldn't afford a woman like her. I responded by calling her a lazy woman who had already failed as a mother because of how scared our eldest daughter was of her. Now, she was failing as a wife too. That remark really hurt her, and she pushed me hard. I lost my footing and collapsed onto the coffee table with force, causing the glass to shatter and injuring myself. I was rushed to the ER while she kept apologizing and sobbing nonstop. Fortunately, it was just my back that was hurt, and the injuries were only superficial, but it could have been much worse. At that moment, I lost all trust in Angela. I told her she needed to leave because I no longer trusted her around our kids, knowing there was no way to predict when she might lose her temper again and hurt them too. I asked my parents to watch over our daughters until Angela left, and for a week she kept protesting, promising it wouldn't happen again. But I couldn't believe her anymore. I almost filed for divorce, but she begged for another chance. After a week of back and forth, we agreed she would live with her parents for a while and undergo therapy. Only once she received a clean bill of health from a medical professional would I consider letting her move back in. Clearly, something was wrong with her. Happy people don't act that way, but she was willing to work on it. I didn't want my daughters to grow up without their mother, so I decided to give our marriage a second chance and not pursue a divorce, at least not yet. We also began marriage counseling while living apart, but in the end, it all proved futile when she cheated on me. During the time Angela was living with her parents, my own parents moved in to help take care of my daughters. We went to marriage counseling weekly, and for a while, things seemed to improve. I was in regular contact with her therapist, who told me that Angela had been dealing with postpartum depression, but was showing signs of recovery. One of her symptoms had been anger issues, which had escalated to the point where she physically shoved me. That incident was a wake-up call for both of us. Around the 6-month mark, I allowed her to visit our daughters under my supervision, and slowly, she was becoming herself again. I was relieved and hopeful that we might be able to make things work. But then, out of nowhere, she stopped attending our counseling sessions without explanation and stopped responding to my attempts to contact her. For weeks, I tried reaching out, but she kept brushing me off, claiming she needed space. Finally, after almost 3 months of her avoiding me, I decided to visit her at her parents' house. I hadn't gone earlier because her parents didn't like me and blamed me for everything that had happened. They felt I had driven Angela to the point of acting out. She had told me it would be best if I didn't visit while she was living with them to avoid unnecessary drama, and I had respected that. However, with her growing distance and absence from counseling, I broke the rule and went anyway. When I arrived, her parents weren't helpful at all. They refused to tell me where she was, and then slammed the door in my face. I could tell they were enjoying my distress, which only heightened my unease. Feeling anxious, I decided to call Angela while standing outside her parents' house. I dialed several times, but she didn't answer, making my paranoia grow. I decided to sneak around to the backyard because I knew her parents often left the kitchen door unlocked. To my surprise, I didn't even need to go that far. I saw Angela sitting on a swing in the backyard. The bad news? She wasn't alone. She was kissing a man I didn't recognize. The moment is etched in my memory. The man quickly pulled away when he saw me, and by the time Angela turned around, I was already walking back to my car. She chased after me, trying to stop me, but I couldn't bear to listen to her. In shock, I told her to keep her hands off me and continued to my car. I drove home in silence, blocking her on every platform the moment I arrived, so she couldn't explain herself. I told my parents what had happened and asked them to help me find a lawyer. I didn't see or hear from Angela again until we met with the court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. By then, I had become emotionally numb, going through the motions for the sake of my daughters. Even when I found out Angela was terminating her parental rights, I felt nothing. She had already made up her mind that she wanted to be with the man I saw her with. Let's call him Sean. Sean was an old friend from her childhood, and though they had lost touch after high school, they had reconnected when she moved back in with her parents. She had fallen in love with him, and her parents supported it. They had always hoped Angela would end up with Sean, and they were thrilled that she was finally choosing to prioritize her happiness. Despite her being married with 2 kids, they were happy to see her with him. The divorce was lengthy because Angela still wanted alimony, even after everything. My lawyer and I fought hard to ensure she didn't get a penny, as I had been the one paying for everything while she stayed home watching TV. 5 years have passed since the divorce was finalized. We succeeded in our goal. Angela walked away with nothing. The months leading up to the divorce were the hardest of my life, but I knew I couldn't break. I had to stay strong for my daughters, as they only had me. My parents were incredibly helpful, and I can't thank them enough for their support during that time. I balanced work and caring for my kids, and even though the divorce felt like the worst thing that could happen to me, I now feel grateful for it. Life has treated me well since then, and I'm in a much better place, both financially and emotionally. We've moved into a larger house, thanks to a better salary, and I no longer have to worry about providing for anyone other than my daughters and myself. My parents live nearby and visit occasionally. I have friends who care about me, and my daughters are as happy as can be. Life feels complete, and I'm incredibly thankful for how far I've come. But then, a few days ago, Angela showed up at my door. The kids were at school, and I was about to leave for work when I heard the doorbell. When I opened it, Angela was standing there, holding a small boy, who I immediately recognized as her son. He couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 years old, and I knew instantly that he was hers. My shock was evident as she started crying, saying she was there to apologize and make things right. She told me she wanted to give our marriage another chance and that we could be a family again. I couldn't believe it. After all these years, she was suddenly back, asking for another chance, as if she had any right to make that decision. In that moment, I made up my mind. I shut the door in her face, telling her she was no longer part of our family. I had stopped being her husband the day she cheated, and the divorce was just a legal formality. She had willingly given up custody of our daughters, and now she had no right to claim us as her family. I would have let my anger out, but I held back for the sake of the little boy. I heard her crying on the other side of the door for a while, but I chose to ignore it. After ensuring she was gone, I went to work and tried to push the whole thing out of my mind. But when I returned home that evening, I received a call from my parents, demanding an explanation for why I had turned Angela away. They told me she had contacted them after I shut the door and was devastated by my rejection. My parents had even given her my new address and encouraged her to reach out. They believed it was time I considered the kids' needs and that Angela deserved another chance. They argued it was her right to try to reconcile with me, as she was now in the process of divorcing Sean. I was furious. It wasn't their place to make decisions about my life, and I told them off. They refused to acknowledge their mistake, citing all the help they had given me during the divorce. We got into a heated argument. They claimed I was being selfish by not allowing Angela another chance. They believed they had an equal say in what was best for the kids, but I couldn't disagree more. My daughters were my responsibility, and while I would always be grateful for their support during the divorce, it was not their place to let Angela back into my life. They told me that they had thoroughly considered the situation and were certain that she had changed and deserved to be part of my daughters' lives, even though I reminded them that she had legally relinquished her rights. They claimed it was offensive for me to think they would endanger my daughters or me and accused me of ruining their lives by being too prideful to accept that they needed their mother. It's been several days now, and I don't believe I was wrong or selfish. I've thought about this a great deal. I feel guilty for not offering my ex-wife a second opportunity to be a mother. Update 1. About a week has passed since Angela showed up at my door with her son, and I recently uncovered the truth about her connection with my parents. Honestly, it's so disturbing that I'm not sure where to start, and I'm still struggling to process it. It's shocking how they all betrayed me without a second thought. Apparently, not only did they tell Angela my new address, but they had been in contact with her all along. I had cut her out of my life after the divorce, but they hadn't. They believed she would eventually come around. They didn't talk much, maybe once a month, but that was enough to make me feel deceived. Angela had signed away her rights when the divorce papers were finalized, and I gave her an ultimatum. Either she could leave her family and start anew with Sean, or she could try to regain custody of the kids, but would have to leave him behind. According to my parents, it was a tough decision for her, but she chose to build a new life with Sean. My parents claimed that Angela reached out to them shortly after I filed for divorce, seeking their help. She wanted to stay in touch with her kids privately, saying she had been cornered by both of us. She felt that no matter what, she wouldn't see her children. I had been fighting for full custody with limited visitation rights for her, while Sean pressured her to abandon the kids completely. Even if she fought for custody, the odds of getting partial custody were slim, especially given the circumstances of our divorce and her history of temper issues. So, pursuing custody seemed pointless. Then, my parents intervened. They secretly met Angela and practically begged them to help her stay connected with the kids. She knew that once she signed away her rights, she wouldn't even have visitation, let alone supervision. But my parents would, and they planned to take advantage of that. They secretly allowed Angela to meet the kids, which hurt me deeply. My parents justified it, saying Angela's situation struck a chord with them and they couldn't, in good conscience, keep a mother from her children. They had no qualms about stabbing me in the back for years. They told me that whenever I would drop the kids off, they would invite Angela over to spend time with them. The kids never told me they were seeing their mother, as my parents bribed them with toys and sweets to keep quiet. Anytime I asked about their time at their grandparents' house, my daughters would tell me they were playing games with my parents and their friend. I always assumed this was just one of my parents' actual friends, but apparently, that's what my parents told my daughters to say when asked. I couldn't believe my daughters had been lying to me, but I forgave them because they're just kids, and Angela and my parents manipulated them into silence. After I learned the truth, I asked my daughters about meeting their mother in secret, and they started crying, saying they couldn't tell me because they would be punished by God. Angela and my parents must have really drilled this into them. They had been so secretive and vague all this time. I also felt like a terrible father for not questioning which friends of my parents the kids had been with. It could have been someone else, someone more dangerous than Angela, and I might never have found out. But this ends now, because I'm getting a restraining order against all of them. I already have proof, as my parents sent me an email a few days after our fight, hoping it would make me realize how desperate Angela was to remain a mother to her daughters without losing Sean, the love of her life, and somehow this would lead me to forgive everyone involved. But all it did was make me realize that everyone here had been lying, and I can't trust anyone anymore. It's also ironic that Angela signed away her parental rights and had to meet our kids secretly as if it were a crime, all because Sean didn't want her to have contact with her previous family. He was supposed to be her one true love. But now even they were getting divorced, and all that turned out to be for nothing. They had a son together. But according to my parents, Sean wanted nothing to do with her or their child because he had received a job offer and was moving away in a few months. Angela had recently started working again, and their son was beginning kindergarten year, so she didn't want to move with him, which led to constant fighting. Finally, 3 months ago, Sean told her he was done. He was taking the job and moving out. He didn't want to be a family man anymore because it meant sacrificing his own future and happiness for hers, and he wasn't willing to do that. This was all meant to make me feel sympathy for Angela, but it only made me feel like justice had been served. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and the petition for the restraining orders has been filed. My daughters and I have discussed everything, and I've told them that they will never see their grandparents or mother again. For now, they seem okay with it, but we'll continue therapy to work through the challenges, especially since I'm sure it's been difficult for them over the past 5 years. But it all ends now. Hey, everyone! I'm really grateful for all the support and kind messages. My parents and Angela have been served with restraining orders and are due to appear in court in a few days. I don't know how they feel about it because I've blocked them on all platforms, and I've told my friends not to engage with them in case they contact them. I've also increased security around my home and have been working from home for the past few days. I informed my daughter's school authorities about the situation, and initially, I didn't plan on letting them go to school for a while, but I didn't want their education to suffer. Teachers are now keeping a close watch on them and ensuring only I can pick them up after school. I'm doing everything in my power to make sure they can't reach us, and so far, it's been effective. I hope that, once the restraining orders are finalized, they'll continue to stay away. Hi, this is just a short update. We received the restraining order, and for the next 5 years, those three will have to keep their distance or face serious consequences. I'm keeping all the security measures in place for the time being because the last time I saw them, they looked furious and I don't want to take any chances. My daughters and I are attending regular family therapy sessions, and I'm optimistic about making progress in the coming months. We've already made significant strides. Honestly, all I want now is for my daughters to be happy. That's all that matters. Please continue to send us your best wishes. We really need them.